Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And the perfect follow-up episode to earlier this week, what men now don't understand about women.
And some of you are going to be like, oh my gosh, I needed to hear this.
This solves it all.
Now, it may not solve everything going on in your relationship, but I think that this is something so often forgotten. And sometimes it is the simple things that can make a huge difference. Like, I love the phrase for some reason that small hinges swing big doors. And for some reason that just is a good visual for me to see that sometimes if you just have some small shift, it can make a huge difference. Now, the last episode we talked about what women don't understand about men. And of course, we want to make sure that both parties are represented. And before we go into the specifics, I think something that's often forgotten is that we can go into a relationship giving the other person what we think we want or need, meaning we can treat them as if they're kind of a replica of us and not think about, okay, what does this other person who's different than me, what do they need in this situation? And so I think that's a good reminder. I'm even saying this to myself right now. I need to stay focused on what is best for you, even if it's different for you than I would want in this moment.
Well, in this episode, it's me thinking about what do I need to understand about you as my female partner rather than myself, what I need in a given situation or what I think is the best next step.
Exactly. And as we said last episode about understanding men, this is coming from the hundreds of conversations that we have had with couples. And sometimes we have to pause the couple in an interaction and say, wait. You two are interacting with each other in a way that is really, you're like having different conversations here. And so again, I'm going to say this episode, just like last episode, if there is something you are not able to have a breakthrough in, you're just staying stuck in it as a couple, then book a relationship breakthrough session with us. That is a private 2-on-2 session that you can do from anywhere in the world. And that's at meetthefreemans.com/coaching. You can read about it. You can read why couples love it, why they feel like they get so much progress in even just that first hour. So that's meetthefreemans.com/coaching.
So what is it I don't understand?
Okay, what you don't understand, well, you have learned to really understand, is we don't want you to fix it. We just want you to hear our emotion. And sometimes you just hearing our emotion and listening to what we're feeling is the solution.
That's a big one. You might even need to say that again.
Okay, we don't want you to fix it. When we are sharing our emotion, our feelings, we want you to just focus on understanding what we're saying. Almost all you have to do is just listen. Like, that's it. You don't even have to have the perfect response, the solution for it. And in fact, when you provide a logical solution or feedback or, hey, here's how you could just fix that, it actually has us feel somewhat emotionally unsafe or as though our emotion isn't okay. And that you don't accept our emotion and it's not okay. And for us, that sometimes can mean that if you don't accept or validate my emotion, I don't feel cared for. And if I don't feel cared for, I don't feel loved. And that's often, the underlying feeling that we're going for. And so truly in those moments where emotion is being expressed, even if it doesn't make sense to you, even if you don't feel the same way, we just want you to be with it, just hear it, just listen. And that's it.
Yeah, the shift for me, and I've said it this way to other male partners on coaching sessions, you will tend to want to find the fix or the solution as a particular action or behavior to change. If you just think about my partner needs to be validated and understood as the actual solution, that was a little bit easier because I think my brain and probably most men's brains, we think of things in terms of what's the solution here. So that was easier for me to get to. Oh, the solution? Oh, maybe don't say anything. Just tend to listen more. And in that, have some more touch available, like putting a hand on the shoulder, nodding, just affirming, making affirming noises like, oh, yeah. So just all those little things so that you feel validated and understood. It doesn't mean that it's truth. Doesn't mean that it's in competition with how I'm feeling. That's just this in this moment. The solution is do the things, show interest, don't say certain things, pay attention enough so that you feel as if what you're feeling is completely valid for what's happening.
And I think within this same note is that what men sometimes don't know about women or just forget about is that when we're expressing feelings and emotions, we might use kind of grand statements, generalizations. Yep. We might say things in ways that sound quote unquote dramatic to you. And that's just because we're trying to use words to describe something that's really a feeling. And in a way, you have to remember that words are actually limiting. You know, we're trying to use right now in the English language sounds and vibration to describe things that sometimes aren't really describable. It's just a body sensation. It's a feeling. It's an emotion. And it isn't quote unquote logical. Mm-hmm. And you may not even see that it makes sense. You're like, A doesn't lead to B. And we're like, yes, it does. A totally leads to B.
Yeah, well, A goes to F and then J and then gets to B.
That's true, right? It is more like that.
Maybe. I don't know.
Right. And I think that's something I'd want men who happen to be with a female partner is to remember that we don't want you to latch on to certain words or, you know, if let's say we are talking about something outside the relationship, you might want to correct facts or the details and be like, but that's not what they said. But that's the thing. We're not actually having you even focus on the facts. We want you to just focus on the feeling that we are trying to express because and this isn't true for all women because there are some more reserved women who more silently process. However, as a whole, women tend to more so process outwardly. Mm-hmm. You know, we need to almost talk it through. And sometimes it might be like the first 10 minutes isn't even what we're trying to really say. That's all just like stuff to try and finally get to the real thing that we're feeling and the deeper emotion. And it takes us saying some stuff out loud to get there.
Yeah, it's a hard thing for me to remember at times because I do latch on to specific words. Mm-hmm. And remember, if I was talking to you, the listener, whoever you are, and you said something, if I asked you, oh, can you say that again? You wouldn't say it exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. Right? That's interesting. So our word choice isn't even repeatable per se. We're just, in a sense, grabbing the words that are there to describe the experience that we're having. Mm-hmm. So especially when emotion is there, that gets magnified. And I tend to really latch on to, oh, that's not how that was. Or you use a particular word, and then I hone in on that. Mm-hmm. And it's a hard thing, or it takes some practice from a male perspective to let that go in the moment. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, there's a picture being painted here. Mm-hmm. Whatever the words are that are being used to paint that picture, I'm just going to let that be. You know, it makes you think of if you were watching an artist paint a painting, you're not going to along the way keep on asking, oh, why using that color? That doesn't make sense. Is that supposed to be a tree? Like, you shouldn't have been using this canvas probably. No. Like, stop interrupting him. Let him paint the whole picture. See what the whole thing looks like. Then you can go from there.
That's a great way to say it. And part of why just listening and not at all providing the solution or the feedback is the solution is because emotion is energy in motion. And sometimes we just need to actually say words, just say it, this is all I got. And that actually helps us move that emotion. And then that's it. And then if you embrace us, love us, hear it, now we're on to the next, right? Like kind of, we just need that affirmation. You know, we're almost like bidding for, do you care enough to listen? Do you love me enough to just listen and validate my experience?
Are there any scenarios that you might have that this could come up?
Absolutely. So imagine that we are venting about something else. It doesn't even have to do with the relationship. Maybe it's something with the children. Maybe it's something in your career, profession, a friend, a family member, right? So we're venting about something else. When we're sharing that, and we may be offering some generalizations or even things like we might, if it's about another person, say things and you're like, that's so not true. Like, that's not what they said, or that's not what they did. We truly just want you to validate us and not defend like the other person or the profession or whatever it is that we're describing about, because it can actually feel a little triggering if you defend that outside person or situation, rather than just hearing how it was impacting us. And that's really all we want, right? Is you to just validate that our perspective and our feelings are okay. So that's one scenario where we're just venting about something else. The other would be where we are talking about something within the relationship and we are sharing about how it felt to us. You know, maybe it's something you said or the way you said it and it was triggering or how it hurt us. We just want you to focus on the feeling, not defending the facts or your perspective, or this is a big one, or saying that we shouldn't feel that way, that it's not that big of a deal. No, that's a no-go, right? Like that is only going to have us react, you know, further and feel invalidated, because again, feeling heard means being cared. Being cared for means being loved. And that's really what we're just searching for in that moment. So if we're sharing about something that has to do with the relationship, even if you see the situation differently, even if you think it's not that big of a deal, if you just mostly hear us, validate us, embrace us, that's really what we're usually looking for in that moment.
Let me remind men of 2 tips here, because again, over the weekend, we were with our 2 friends, Michael and Mackenzie. We all had a cacao ceremony, which I'm actually excited to have one of these types of gatherings with couples here in Arizona. We'll talk more about that later. But it's a space to be able just to share what challenges might be there, you know, share yourself. And that's really what we did. And I really appreciate them being in our life to provide us the opportunity. So point being, you were sharing about how, and this is not going to be new to the listeners, this past month and a half now has been very difficult on me in particular. That obviously impacts you. And you were sharing about the deeper impact and how you haven't been feeling reassured by me. Now, I think I did a good job, so hence why I'm bringing this up. I noticed while you were sharing that with the 4 of us, there was a tendency for me to say some version of, well, I've done this, and that should have had you feel reassured.
Interesting, yeah.
And the tip for men here is there's going to be a point in time where you feel something about what they're saying. It's like I felt like I wanted to defend myself, because here you're saying you don't feel reassured. I wanted to provide some sort of logic, some sort of reminder of an action I have taken that should have had you feel reassured. So what you're saying doesn't make sense. So 2 things. You just have to let that feeling of needing to jump in or provide something, and you got to just kind of either hold that back or just more so let it be within you for a minute. And I also suggest, I guess this is a 2-parter, just watch what your face is doing. So in just like that, just holding it back, because you're not meant to be like suppressed, but you let that feeling be, not jumping in like you have a tendency to, and just don't let your face like tense up or grimace.
Show judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Show any sort of judgment, and instead, because what you can do to interrupt that pattern is do something different with your body. If you just reach out and touch your partner on the hand or the shoulder or something, that's going to pay dividends.
I really love that you brought that up, because the facial expression does mean a lot, right? It's like your body language, it's portraying to me that you judge what I'm saying. So I love that you brought that up.
Because I could sit back and not say anything, but if my face was like...
He's making this gnarly face right now.
Like, if your body is portraying and your face is like, are you kidding me?
Right. And we just want our emotion to be okay. You know, even if you wouldn't feel the same way, even if it does make sense to you, we just want it to be okay that we're feeling the emotion. And that, again, is often the solution. Now, like Aaron gave some tips to the men for last episode, right? About how to be responsible for this part of ourselves. Now, I'm a woman, and one way that I try to be responsible for this is I realize that just because I'm feeling something and it's really prominent for me, doesn't mean it's the right time to talk about it with you. And so it's about respecting and thinking about the most appropriate time for it, and also the most respectful way to bring it up, right? I have to be responsible for how I am going to kind of outlet this emotion, and to not have an excuse. Well, I'm feeling sad, so I get to just bust into the room and bring it up any way that I want. And so I check in with myself, and then sometimes even asking you, like, is it okay if I share some stuff on my mind? You know, even stuff outside of our relationship. If we're sitting at dinner, I'll be like, hey, there's some stuff on, my mind, or I'm feeling some stuff about X, Y, and Z situation. Is it okay if I share it with you? Like, I just need to vent about this. And actually telling you that's all I need, right? Like, if I can actually just say, like, all I need to do is vent about this family member, right? Like, that's all I want. That can help set you up for success.
Yeah.
The other thing I would invite women to be responsible for is realizing that your partner can't be all things to you in all moments. And so if your partner is going through their own thing, or they're stressed, or they're busy, or something else is going on, you may want to see if there's another outlet that you can have. Like, they can't be that outlet for you all the times in all moments. And so I'm not saying go and gossip to other people, especially if it has to do with your relationship, right? Then they're the most appropriate person to talk with, or at least a coach or mentor like us, for example. But maybe it is a therapist, a coach. Maybe it's a friend that your partner approves of that you talk with. But it's different venting versus gossiping, or like, there's a responsible way to go and talk to someone. Like, hey, I need to just talk about this, but I want you to give feedback to me, right? About myself, not tell me that my partner is the wrong one in the situation. And so what the point I'm trying to make here is to realize that if you have strong emotion and you're feeling things, that you either want to have a confidant that's appropriate to talk to, or have your own way of processing emotion, whether that's journaling, letting yourself cry, letting yourself go exercise, breath work, different forms of moving emotion in your body. And I think that's something I had to really learn, and this would be maybe another episode to go more in depth to this, but let's say we talk about it with our partner and we're still feeling the emotion, we may need to get resourceful for other ways to release that emotion. It's, called emotional release. And so I think, have I been better at that, would you say, like in terms of picking the right time for expressing these things?
Yeah, I think so. I wasn't ready necessarily for your question and hadn't reflected on it, but I think you've been asking if now is a good time. I think you've also been noticing that it's probably not a great time. When I was, coming back from the property and managing it and all that, and it wasn't like you were being suppressed. So actually, yes, this is great. You did 2 in particular courses, one on projector, one on identity. So you did seek out other resources to process, I think, what you were going through and feeling.
Yeah, and that was one way that I was working through it was, okay, let me sign up for these programs, which were all about understanding myself emotionally and going through some identity shifts and work, because I do realize, like, you can't be my therapist, my coach, my lover, managing all these things around. And so yeah, those are 2 things I'd really want to invite women into remembering. And any final reminders for the men on this side?
Well, I would say another resource, because there's not really a lot of easily accessible resources for you as a couple, especially around this type of topic. So we do relationship breakthrough sessions. That really might be the next best step for you, in 1 hour. And we do a form prior to the call that lets us know what's the area that you're really focused on, where's the place that you've been stuck. So it really gives us background context. And you can go to meetthefreemans.com/coaching and you can read more about the details. Couples get more out of this in 1 hour than they have of doing a course or doing a month of counseling. Even we just get right to the heart of it, and we can give you a skill to practice right then and there, even with your partner in a safe space, facilitate a conversation, give you the skill again to then practice afterwards, but you'll have a bigger breakthrough in that 1 hour than probably anything else you've done as a couple.
And a lot of reason that it's helpful to have an outside listener is because you're so in the situation as one of the partners that you sometimes can't see the broader perspective or, the couple tweaks that if you just each do this thing, it can make a huge difference. And that's why a coach like us can say, hey, we're not biased in this situation. So we can see the resource that's going to help.
And we pause your trigger responses.
Yes, exactly.
So you don't get off in the weeds.
Yeah, so definitely go and book a relationship breakthrough session. We've been loving meeting so many of you. And we really hope that this episode, along with the one before about understanding men, was helpful. So please let us know by putting a 5-star review, writing a comment about enjoying this podcast episode. We love you. We do this for you. We hope it's valuable, and we will talk to you on the next episode.